Hey guys, Matthew here once again with a follow-up video for the end game of the ward stacking Antiquarian that utilized some block tech, some Tempest Shield stuff, and of course the cast on crit Cyclone Reap situation. So as I said, it's a pretty flexible setup. I think you can do just about anything with it, but I did commit hard to the cast on crit into the Reap, and it is a pretty glorious looking playstyle. It's a very smooth kind of setup, and if you're really worried about trying one of these, during this league or with Antiquarian or Ward, I think this is a kind of setup that you can probably play on some other build types as well, even on the normal league. If we're talking like an Inquisitor with some Battle Mage action, maybe some Energy Blade, maybe some, two-handed Battle Mage action, all kinds of stuff. I think cast on crit Cyclone Reap should be, doable in plenty of other circumstances too. But it's obviously very strong here as a ward character. As I said, you do get something like 2 to 2,500 chaos damage in our current setup, and that applies to the Ball Lightning in my shield, the Tempest Shield, the Lightning Bolt on my weapon, and also the big Reap action. So in the end, it feels like I've got something like 15 to 20 million DPS, because I did end up taking on all the endgame that I basically could. I farmed tier 17s with Harbingers a whole bunch, and throughout like 1.5 days of doing Harbinger farm, which is using all the scarabs that I could, and whatever scuffed idol setup I had of my own, plus buying one idol for 90C. Over that time, I ended up farming, I think quite luckily, 5 fractured orbs, because they drop, in fracture shards, and then sometimes just as a whole orb, if you get lucky with the idol proc that can drop currency shards as an orb instead. So I did a bunch of Harbinger farm, and it's a very smooth character for that, because you're just blocking all the time, and you can just even like loot the previous Harbingers while killing a certain Harbinger, so it becomes pretty cruisy for that. The having 90% block for attack and spells, of course, powerful as shit as always, as you can see. You do still have the weakness of potentially dying through all of that to just one shot, because the ward that we have doesn't protect us that well, since we're wearing night grip gloves. 75% of the damage goes through regardless, so it does make ward a whole lot weaker, but it's still there as some kind of defensive mechanic. It's honestly just mostly there as an actual offensive mechanic. So if you want ward to do a whole bunch, then yeah, you're out of shit out of luck for that one, unless you use an Olroth flask, and then you basically have to nerf your damage by a lot every single time you press it. So I was in the end farming tier 17s, even getting some XP throughout farming them, but some scuffed map mods can of course ruin your day on that one. So I wasn't necessarily leveling through tier 17s, but I think it's fully possible. Like, I was taking liberties to die if I needed to, it doesn't really matter, because I was mostly leveling through juiced tier 16s, and it was actually insane amounts of gem XP as well, as one other thing I'll mention, because I flipped like my support gems, and then they were level 20 by about 2 hours of my tier 16 farm, which is like unprecedented levels of gem XP that I've ever gotten through any kind of farm. So pretty thick, tight farm. I then did, of course, take on all the Ubers that I could, because I haven't really bought any sets. I was just going out of my way. Wasn't going to go out of my way to buy any fragments and stuff. I was just going to do what I had. And finally, after farming up some tier 17s and fragments, I did take on this character, this here, Uber Eater of Worlds, did Searing Exarch, did Uber Shaper, no wait, Uber Elder, and yeah, I think that was it. And it's decent, as you can see. It's got decent damage. The Drowning Orbs are super annoying still as a kind of like melee Cyclone-ish type character, but you block most things on this fight. You block most things on most of these fights. Here's some examples of like Fracture Orbs or Fracture Shards and stuff, and how comfortable it is to loot during, still peak thick combat, thanks to our block situations. And yeah, like I said, the gem XP is pretty crazy as well. On top of that, I also did run 3 simulacrums. I have been randomly getting a lot of splinters because of the mirrors that for some reason persist basically forever. I ended up running 3 simulacrums and 2 completion, all 15 waves, all 3 times. Died a couple on maybe 2 of them, and then 1 of them was like really smooth. It's just up to, you know, a couple of bad modifiers and whether or not CoC like gets through and like one-shots you, or maybe Omniphobia one-shots you, and just a bad series of shotgunning from lots of mobs. But it can be a decent enough simulacrum farmer, I think. So yeah, not a bad simulacrum situation, but probably not the best because there's plenty of like damn near AFK farming simulacrum builds out there. This is the Uber Elder attempt and or kill, and yep, as you can see, the beams are insanely dangerous to us still. So we can pretty much block everything in this fight and probably survive every hit. But degens and beams are pretty annoying. Like my character doesn't even have no regen whatsoever. It's pretty good. It's something like 500 life regen, I think, and that's compared to my life pool of 4.5k, so it's over 10%. But that still isn't really enough to counteract plenty of the tomfoolery that is out there through degens, through beams. Probably the smoothest abomination kill I've had in, I don't know, a whole long time, because we can block a whole bunch of that stuff. And then, yeah, it depends, of course, on map mods. So yeah, pretty good character for 17s. Decent enough character for Ubers. My typical go-to for destroying Ubers is basically killing them before they can do anything, but this one has a decent balance of sort of survivability and offense. You can see that the reaps do kind of overlap pretty nicely if you have a large enough target and right on top of them and give them the business. So this is Uber Searing Exarch. I, do well enough to kind of kite the balls with my current movement speed, so I wasn't doing too bad on that. But the ad that spawns, I believe his third attack when he does his smash ends up like guaranteed hitting you, like you can't block that. So I did die a couple times to that because I'm just like tanking the Searing Exarch, and then the ad just like does his combo and one-shots me. So careful on that one. But otherwise, the Annihilation is not too bad. So with all that farm, with all that behind me, I ended up doing one more Uber Eater of Worlds and getting one of the first jewels I've had in a long ass time. And it turned out to be a very expensive one indeed. So we'll, sell some stuff, still got plenty of currency, and then move on to the next build. This character here was a lot of fun. Played it for about a day, hit level 96, did a bunch of 17s and simulacrums and Ubers and delve, and then it's time to move on. So can thoroughly recommend stacking Ward. It's now officially a bit more expensive, but that just is what it is. Yeah, good stuff, Antiquarian. Probably move on to a Harbinger next and see what we can cook up there. So thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time.